Hello everyone, happy Friday. Here's what's coming up tonight on News Center Now. A warning went out on Facebook. A strange man knocking on doors asking to be let into the home. We found the man and he says it's definitely not what it looks like.
I'm listening.
Maine students demand action on gun control. How will our elected leaders respond?
A nor'easter brings coastal flooding and strong winds pounding Maine's coast.
This is News Center Now.
Wet, raw, and windy outside. Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Goldberg.
And I'm Lindsay Mills. For most of the state, today is nothing more than a nasty day of rain and wind. But for southern Maine's coastal towns, the high tide and pounding rain is disastrous for homes and business.
Chris Costas in Camp Ellis, where people are desperately trying to keep their properties from flooding. But first, we go to Keith Carson, who's in Biddeford. Keith, another high tide later tonight.
Yeah, we are going to be watching the high tide, Lee, around midnight tonight. You know, obviously, we got by with some damage today. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, so that's the good news. High tide projections very, very close. We're now in Biddeford, as you mentioned, and the story through the afternoon and early evening is the wind, which is howling here in an exposed northeast direction. We chose this beach because of the way it kind of faces northeast without much in the way of sheltering. Wind gusts probably around 45 miles an hour at this point. I think southern Maine, extreme southern Maine, has a chance to crack 50, maybe up to 55, but that chance will only go for a short period of time before we start to shift this storm out of here. Let's have a look at the current wind speeds and gusts. And again, real action has been down across Massachusetts, as we thought might be the case, where the winds are much stronger. Hurricane force gusts down across the Cape. See those purples there? Down across Gloucester, down into Revere, Boston, and into the Cape. Wind speeds here around 40 miles an hour, as I anticipated might be the case. Precipitation shields only moved in maybe 1/5 or so of the state, and it's not going to go any farther north. If anything, you can see the wobble now southward with the storm system as it starts to move away. Some big crushing snow across upstate New York and western parts of Massachusetts, but we saw just a bit of freezing drizzle, and that was about it. The rest of it was rain, and not even all that much rain over much of the state. Take a look at this enhanced satellite picture. Good looking storm there, just really well developed. A really bombed out kind of storm, stalled to the south of that ridge of high pressure as we anticipated. Again, the worst of the action down to the south. As we go through the night, it's still windy. I don't think, though, that the winds have too much potential to become damaging. They're very annoying. You can hear them whistling here, but I don't think they're going to do too much damage. Just a couple of scattered power outages. Then tomorrow is actually cloudy and breezy day again. The storm system in the vicinity. It stays a little breezy on Sunday. The storm is not all that far away. We don't get rid of it until Monday or so. So, you know, at this point, Lee and Lindsay, you know, the winds are an annoyance, and there are a couple people here without power, but I don't anticipate we'll see widespread power outages. The winds are just too small and over a small area across southern Maine.
All right, Keith, and we'll check back in with you in just a little bit. Now, a nor'easter at this time of year can certainly mean snow.
But the rain and rough seas is a nightmare for some coastal towns. Chris Costa is in Camp Ellis, where the storm damaged homes this afternoon.
Hey, Lee and Lindsay, yeah, we're still seeing those wind gusts pretty strong here down in Camp Ellis area. It's obviously much closer to low tide. That's coming up at 5:34, so things here are a lot calmer than they were earlier this afternoon. If you take a look, you can see kind of a lot of debris on the ground behind me, and then over my shoulder there, those white bubbles are essentially barriers to protect homes from the strong waves and winds that blasted them earlier this afternoon. And now the people who live here and work in businesses nearby are preparing for another round. Crushing waves and whipping wind, battering seaside homes. Astronomical high tides and strong gusts, forcing crews to put up defenses and bringing brave neighbors out to look.
It's a little sad to see the destruction, but at the same time, it's like, wow, so awe-inspiring.
Rising rivers flooding parking lots and businesses in Kennebunkport. Water creeping through the floor of the Hurricane restaurant. It's the restaurant's second battle with flooding in less than 2 months.
So I'll feel so much better when it's all over.
3 high tides in 24 hours, complicating permanent cleanup.
There's nothing I can do. It's water. You know, you can't stop the water from coming. It can always be worse, people. It can always be worse. So it's just business and it's just stuff. But I'm so glad I didn't lay the carpet. And the floor is waterproof.
Down, we're cutting out traffic right at the bridge there.
Cars sloshing through inches of water on main streets that were eventually closed.
No, this is unusual, definitely.
So I know it's Mother Nature and all, but it's just difficult for all the people who are affected by it. And it affects their businesses and their livelihoods. And the rest of us, it's just a beautiful inconvenience.
That beautiful inconvenience is set to come once again around 11:40 tonight with yet another astronomical high tide. And that restaurant we told you about, the Hurricane, they're hoping to be ready to open by the end of the month. Lee and Lindsay, back to you.
All right, Chris, thanks. Amazing pictures there. All right, some developing stories at this hour. Police say a body was found at a Pittsfield car dealership. The body was in the trunk of a car at the Varney Chevrolet. State police are investigating.
Bangor police are searching for a suspect who jumped into the Kanduska Extreme to avoid officers. Officials say Peter Manuel was involved in an altercation. When police tried to talk to him, he jumped into the stream twice. They lost sight of him the second time.
So a mysterious man knocking on doors offering a candle. Biddeford police say they've gotten a few calls about it.
A Facebook user, Kathy Gagnon, wrote a warning to her neighbors on Facebook. It was shared hundreds of times. So who is this man and what's going on? We found out. Surveillance video from a Maine homeowner shows what appears to be a man approaching the home with something in his hand. It's part of a long thread on Facebook started by Kathy Gagnon. She writes, "Just had a man in a white Lexus Camry with New Hampshire or Vermont plates stop by our house, handed us a candle and said he wanted to come in and offer us some nice things for our home. We said no, gave him the candle back and sent him on his way. He left and didn't stop at a single house after." She asks, did anyone else have someone stop by with this? The entire thing seems odd to me and scary. Her post was shared hundreds of times, and police in Biddeford say they've received half a dozen calls about it.
I was actually a little upset that people were seeing me in that light.
Bill Roberts is the man in those photos.
I'm with the Kirby Company.
Roberts says he's a door-to-door vacuum salesman, and he called police as soon as he saw the Facebook post to clear the air. Biddeford police confirm he is doing nothing wrong.
I'm trying to show people how to clean their homes in an appropriate way, especially those who have asthma and allergies.
He says he's been with the company for 20 years.
The worst thing that happens is that people get a free candle and a free carpet shampoo.
A Kirby vacuum representative tells News Center Maine the company's salespeople are independent and go door to door to sell their products. There are no distribution centers in Maine, but 2 in New Hampshire and 1 in Vermont.
I apologize for anyone who felt that they were uncomfortable. But we're trying to do something positive for homeowners, and obviously people who do bad things make what I do much harder.
So clearly, of course, this whole thing was a huge misunderstanding. A Kirby representative says the business has been around 100 years, and they have 2 central locations, 1 in Texas and 1 in Ohio.
That guy, poor guy, right?
I know. It was good to hear him today.
All right, end of an era in Bangor. Friars Bakehouse is irreplaceable, but don't you worry. They're moving on to bigger and brewer things. And how old is too old to be a millennial? Are you talking to me? The official generation breakdown is coming up next.
You weren't hungry when you came in the door. You are by now.
It's a sad farewell for a Bangor staple. Friars Bakehouse is closing up shop after nearly 2 decades downtown. People packed the place during the lunch rush today to get all of their favorite homemade comfort foods and freshly baked bread for the bakery's last day of business. The Franciscan brothers, Donald, Paul, and Kenneth Leo, who run the cash-only establishment, say they're not done, though. They're just moving a half hour south to Bucksport, where they'll be opening, you're hearing this right, a brew pub. Regulars say they will certainly be missed downtown.
This place has meant a lot to me and the community. So it's the only place that honors the Lord.
I don't think anyone's going to be able to fill the particular niche that we had here for as long as we did.
I think it was just part of the charm. I'm sad to lose them, but I understand why they, want to be closer to home.
The Friars' new location set to open up later this month, where they will be much closer to their monastery.
Best of luck to them in that endeavor. Well, some of Maine's teens say Congress needs to do more to protect them from mass shootings.
The very idea that they would feel like adults don't want to listen to them, it's going to be their world. And I'm just hopeful they can help us do the right thing.
Find out where your elected leaders fall in the high-profile gun debate next.
Well, we got through one high tide already, but another one late tonight. We'll talk about that and the rest of the forecast that includes a midweek storm in just a few minutes.
A gunman is on the loose after killing 2 people at the Central Michigan University campus. The school was put on lockdown and students were ordered to shelter in place. Once police declared the campus safe, officials said the victims were not students, faculty, or staff. The suspect was last seen running away from the dorms. Police say he is armed and dangerous.
The CMU Police Department did have contact with the involved individual last evening. At some point in the evening, he was transported to McLaren Hospital due to what the officers believed may be a drug-related type incident, an overdose or a bad reaction to drugs. At that point, he was released to the hospital staff. We're calling it a family-type domestic issue at this point, and that's all we're releasing at this time.
Sources tell the Detroit Free Press, the local paper there, that the victims are believed to be the shooter's parents.
If you're under 21, you can no longer buy a rifle at LL Bean. The age restriction comes after a number of big box stores made changes because of the mass shooting in Parkland. Walmart now has a 21 or older policy, and Dick's Sporting Goods banned the sale of so-called assault-style rifles. In a statement, LL Bean said it will no longer be selling guns or ammunition to anyone under the age of 21.
And with no surprise, there's a lot of mixed reactions, opinions. Aaron says stores aren't lawmakers. If someone is old enough by law, they should be able to buy a gun at Bean. Linda says at least the big stores are trying to do something because lawmakers will drag their feet. Eric says people 18 and older fight for our country. He says Bean never had his business and they never will. And Christine says LL Bean is certainly changing, first the return policy and now gun sales. The gun debate, meanwhile, is loud from Freeport all the way to Washington, D.C. People across the country are pushing for Congress to take action.
Last night we aired a special called Listen to Me, hearing the concerns of 11 high schoolers from our state. Christina Rex and Pat Callahan went to Washington, D.C. to bring those concerns to Maine's congressional leaders and to learn what they plan to do about it.
Lee and Lindsay, we asked Senators Collins and King and Representatives Pingree and Poliquin about their stance on each particular issue in the debate about guns and school safety. Here's a rundown of how our representatives feel about some of the most controversial proposals. First, the most controversial topic, banning AR-15 rifles. The delegation is split down the middle. 2 say yes, 2 are undecided and say they'd have to see the legislation first. Senator Collins says the ban would have to be similar to the assault weapons ban from the 1990s.
I think that we need to draw a line and make sure that we're not banning firearms that are commonly used by hunters for legitimate purposes. But yes.
Senator King says it would depend on the specific language in a ban bill.
I'm not comfortable voting to ban something just because of its looks. If you're talking about its functionality and how lethal it is and how to control that and limit that and ban that, then I would listen.
Issue number 2, banning bump stocks. It's a yes from everyone but Congressman Poliquin. He's undecided and says he'd have to see the language first. Third, raising the age to buy a firearm to 21. It's a yes from everyone except Congressman Poliquin, who's undecided and says he would need to read a proposal.
Does it matter if someone's 18 or 21 if they can get one?
It might very well. Let's look at legislation that's coming down. I'll look at everything very carefully, but that's something that the president has mentioned that he is possibly going to support on. He hasn't quite decided.
Fourth, arming teachers. It's a resounding no from all 4 members. Finally, increasing the nation's background check system. Collins, King, and Pingree say yes. Congressman Poliquin says he doesn't want to see more rules, but instead wants to see our current laws more strictly enforced. And coming up on News Center Maine at 6, Pat Callahan will dive deeper into these issues from our trip to D.C.
All right, Christina, thanks. The weather is nasty in Maine right now, but southern New England is getting pounded. Flooding in the Boston suburbs, roads shut down on the Cape, and so many homes without power there. Not quite that bad in Biddeford, where we find Keith Carson. Keith, the storm was a big story for most of New England.
Yeah, you know, it turned out to be the big story down across southern New England, as we anticipated might be the case. For a lot of people inland in Maine today, you say what storm? It was just a little bit breezy, but you get close to the coastline, there was some flooding earlier. I'd say high end of minor flooding earlier, and now the winds are whipping pretty good, around 40 to 45 miles an hour here in Biddeford, where we're located. Pretty straight northeast fetch. We're pretty exposed here. There's a reason we're doing a live shot here. So this is about as windy as it's getting on the land right now. Let's have a look at our current wind gusts. You know, anything under 55, you're not going to have too many power outages. There was a CMP truck just went by here because they are out power here, but for the most part, we're doing all right. 38 miles an hour in Portland, 35 in Sanford, 33 in Portland. Sustained-wise, they're probably more in the 20s as far as wind speeds. Those are wind gusts that you were looking at there first. All right, look at the radar here. Storm starting to pull away from us. Man, I gotta say, and this is something only a true weather weenie would think about, this could have been such a crushing snowstorm, and it just didn't have the cold air. That warm air nosed in at the mid-levels of the atmosphere all the way down across Massachusetts as well. But now the storm's starting to spin away. Beautiful on satellite picture, well-defined. Had a little bit of an eye earlier today on visible satellite. You're looking at infrared right now. But again, if you showed me that and said it was early March, I'd say, congratulations, we just got 2.5 feet of snow. But not this time. Storm moving away from us tonight. Winds continue to be strong, though. Tides also strong around midnight tonight. Tomorrow is a cloudy and breezy day. We don't really fully escape the influence of the outer bands of the storm. And then Sunday could go either way. Right now I'm playing it as mostly cloudy. There is the chance that we could break out a little bit, particularly along the coastline, and get some sunshine through Sunday afternoon. I'm just not sure I want to commit to it until I see how this storm kind of works its way out of the region first. And then Monday, partly cloudy and temperatures right around 40 degrees. You'll notice when you look at the 7-day forecast in a moment here that temperatures are not going to be all that warm. So future wind gusts still windy tonight and tomorrow. Breezy is how I'd put it along the coastline. Continues through Saturday night, and then finally the core of the winds moves away from us on Sunday, and it's no longer an issue after that. We are watching a storm for the middle of the week. Computer models were hot on this before, but starting to back off a little bit. Right now we'll pencil it in as some snow on Wednesday night, Thursday. Doesn't look like a monster of any kind. Probably just going to be a few inches, but it has potential for more, so we'll keep an eye on that storm system. Again, now that we're to the north of that blocked out low, the party of 50s is over for a while. We'll be between 38 and 42 basically for the next week or so. Again, with that chance of snow coming in on Wednesday, we'll keep an eye on that. That's the biggest thing that's happening in the next few days, and then back to around 40 degrees on Friday. So, you know, Lee, I know you've been enjoying this Maine Diego thing where it's been in the 50s. Winter not ready to give up quite yet with the chance of snow in the middle of the week and keeping us below 45 for the next 7 or 10 days. So sorry, buddy, but you knew how it goes sometimes. It is still Maine, and it's the beginning of March.
I know.
Mother Nature is saying Maine DA no.
Dream crusher. Dream crusher.
All right, I had to. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, you're laughing about this one too. Before you start throwing out the label millennial left and right, it's worth knowing who is and isn't one. Today, the Pew Research Center officially declared the start and end date for the generation. The highly respected agency said babies born between 1981 and 1996 make up the group. So anyone younger than 22 right now is not a millennial, and most of this generation is old enough to have kids of their own. Pew says they have yet to name the latest generation. Of course, anyone, like they said, born after 96.
Well, American actress Meghan Markle and her royal fiance announced that their nuptials will not just be for the rich and famous, because this crazy in love couple will invite people affiliated with certain charities, local school children, and people from all over the country of varying backgrounds and ages. The more than 2,000 lucky guests will go to Windsor Castle, watch as the bride and groom leave the ceremony. In a statement, Kensington Palace said Meghan and Prince Harry want the public to feel like they are part of the celebrations as well.
Did you know I have a slight royal obsession?
I did not know that.
I also have an obsession with signs, those great main road signs that we see, the ones that say, "You and I just click, love your seatbelt."
Or something like 87 is Gronk's number, not the speed limit. Those are just a couple of examples of entertaining yet informative signs that the Maine Department of Transportation has been using for the last year or so. Now, you get a chance to get in on the game as well.
DOT wants the public to submit ideas for the next creative safety sign for the next 2 weeks. You can go on to the department's website and submit your entry. Prizes will be given to the chosen slogans. And remember, stay appropriate, be funny, and safety first.
Safety has to be a part of the messaging, but you know, there's no need to wag a finger at anybody anymore. You know, drive safely or don't drink and drive. You know, those are messages that we want to maybe expand on a little bit and have a little bit of fun. Folks are more sophisticated now that they can really, you know, interpret those messages, be funny, but still get the message across. And if people start talking about the messages, we've done our job.
To make your suggestion for a safety-based yet entertaining message, go to maine.gov.
Okay, Lee, can you handle this? A Burmese python, 31 pounds in Florida, swallowed a 35-pound deer. The snake's eyes were bigger than his stomach. Experts say it's the biggest prey to predator ratio on record. Burmese pythons are an invasive species in Florida. I would not want to come across that thing.
All right, well, I suppose we should take a look at what's coming up on News Center at 5:30. The accused killers of 10-year-old girl are speaking out throughout their attorneys, while lawmakers in Augusta demand an investigation into DHHS to find out if Marissa Kennedy could have been saved from her abusive parents.
And for most high school basketball teams, the state championships are a bus ride away, but not when you live on Maine's islands. And it gets even more complicated when there's a nor'easter in the forecast. Those stories and much more coming up on News Center Maine at 5:30.
News Center Now continues after the break. Well, the UMaine women's basketball team is the top seed in the America East tournament, which tips off this weekend at the Cross Insurance Arena. And the team's head coach has already picked up a pretty big win today.
Yeah, former Coney High School and UMaine standout player Amy Vachon has had the interim title removed from her head coaching position. Vachon signed a 4-year contract to be the official head coach of the Black Bears. She had been filling in for Richard Barron, who was forced to leave the team with medical issues last season.
I covered Amy when she was playing for Coney, and then obviously when she was playing at Maine, and her dad's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And yeah, so it's a great story. So happy for Amy and coach, and I know she cares more about winning this weekend, so hopefully they'll do that as well.
Good luck to all the teams playing, and travel safe as well.
All right, News Center 5:30 begins right now.